Hey, what's going on? Rich the Architect here. Another question I get from a new client when they give me a ring or email me or contact me for any other way for a new project is how much can they do themselves? Like, basically it's like, what can I provide them? But then are there certain items or tasks that they can do themselves during the design and approval and construction process? And a number of things. So like with the design, on the design end, I'll say I have clients who come to me with sketches or floor plans. So their initial ideas are definitely themselves. So but I will say, usually that's more of they come with the idea and then I start drawing that up for them. But through the once you start getting into the approval process, there are a number of things that a client can do themselves. I did mention in one of the previous ones when we were talking about fees is depending on the complexity of the building or the project, you can a client, an owner or whatever can go through the zoning process without the use of an architect. It's probably might sometimes in some cases might be a little bit more difficult to do that, but it's not like a legally required part of the process. But I will say professionally prepared plans make it much easier to go through that. But if you do have something that is small, like a deck, or I actually had somebody call me recently where all they wanted to do was add like a dormer to their roof, to add 1 or 2 dormers to their roof, so they wanted to have some like windows, in a bedroom, or maybe it was an attic that they wanted to finish at a later date. Is something like that on the zoning end is like, no, you can provide a sketch as long as it's to scale and to a certain level of quality, and submit that to your town or city and be able to get a zoning approval for that. Now moving over to actually let me back up. Even on the commercial side, you can, as a business, especially like if you're doing like a tenant fit out, like a small commercial tenant fit out, let's say it's in a strip mall or something, a business could deal with getting the use approval, meaning, let's say in this commercial strip, there's a number of offices, but you're a retail store. So you might be able to get the approval for your retail store in this other space without the use of an architect or another professional like that to get the zoning use approval. Sometimes that can be more of a description. They're more interested for, especially on the use, like hours of operation, what are you selling, type things like that. So you could definitely, as a small business, get some of those approvals done without the use of an architect. On the building permit side, though, typically you can't do that. You would need an architect to assist you there. Where state of New Jersey, where I'm located, is as a homeowner on a residential project, you're allowed to do your own drawings for a project as long as you're also going to be your own contractor. So that means if you're going to build it yourself, you're allowed to draw it yourself and submit that. And I don't know, there may be some like wording that you have to do, or maybe there's a form you have to sign. But as a homeowner, you can do that as long as you're also building it yourself. Now, if you're hiring a contractor, and this is kind of a common misconception about this law, if you're hiring a contractor to build your addition, do your renovation, whatever your project may be, you are required by law to have an architect or structural engineer. But typically, the structural engineer is there's a limited scope that they could do for architectural drawings, but to use either, or you would have to use either if you're hiring a contractor. Some towns and cities, I've found do like kind of, I think they misread the read that law and allow homeowners to draw it up themselves, but the actual law is that you have to have an architect to, if you're hiring not an architect, a contractor to build your project. So, and then on the commercial, it's pretty much you have to have an architect for that. Kind of depends a little bit with the scope. Like if you're kind of like the commercial, like tenants fit out type thing, it's if it's a smaller scope, like let's say there's a vanilla box, not a vanilla box. Let's say there was a something that was in there before. Maybe the businesses were very similar, and there might be a limited amount of work being done. I can give an example of my wife's ballet school. Now, her being married to an architect, I did prepare drawings for that, but all we did on that project was use the space, and we built kind of like it was a full height wall. It had a door in it, but it was like basically we built a wall in the front, so you kind of divided the kind of lobby area to the where the dance space was, the instruction space, and added a small powder room. So something that was very limited there, because the rest of the space was left as is. You know, you may be able to do something like that, but I do know of I did have a client they were a bakery, and they took over a space that was a bakery or some type of food service before, so there was some equipment there, and all they were doing was adding a wall in the front, very similar to my wife's ballet school. They were adding a wall to separate the lobby to the kitchen and the back area, the back of house areas. So they tried to go in, but it didn't. Ended up not. They had to come back and get some work. They had to use somebody like myself for that. So it was yeah. So that's kind of the approval process. And then when it comes to the construction process, it's very simple. I mean, a client can use can deal with the contractor directly. I actually have a lot of projects where that actually does happen, but an architect can be the voice for the owner or client for the contractor, and I do recommend doing that. Not just because I can, more services that I can provide for you, but also it's an architect is there to kind of be your voice, but also protect you against the contractor, and to make sure that whatever was drawn and developed in the design and approval stages is actually what's getting built. Because our experience with construction is we see things much different than a client does. You may be only doing this project, whatever the project may be, once, but we've done it tens, hundreds of thousands of times, depending on how long you've been working in your career. So we see it differently. We can kind of anticipate some issues that you may not be able to see. So I highly recommend using an architect during the construction period, just to kind of protect yourself, protect your investment, and hopefully that, when questions do arise, if you're dealing with the contractor directly, you may not know, I may be able to answer, or another architect may be able to answer the question the contractor has, like, immediately. And you may, you're not familiar with the process, or I shouldn't say a client or a homeowner may not be familiar with the process, so it might take much longer for it, and that's going to delay your time that you're going to, until you can utilize your space or your home, or whatever the project may be. So again, hopefully that's helpful. Again, comment below if you have any further questions or comments about it. Feel free to contact me on my website, dauntlessdc.com, for Dauntless Design Collaborative. And until next time, we'll talk to you. Appreciate it. Appreciate everyone. We'll see you.